Coming up on Talking Points, Governor Kathy Hochul has released her proposed New York State budget. We'll have the latest on what is being prioritized.
Plus, a new challenger has emerged in Arizona's 2024 Senate election. Stay tuned for the latest news from a key battleground state.
And a Chinese surveillance balloon was shot down by the United States this past weekend. We'll have the latest on its trip across the U.S. mainland. All that and more. Talking Points starts right now. Good evening and welcome into Talking Points. I'm Jake Morrell.
And I'm Erica Love. We begin tonight's show with the latest in Governor Kathy Hochul's proposed state budget. Hochul is rolling out her priorities for over $227 billion in state spending for 2024. This is her first budget proposal after winning the gubernatorial election this fall. Talking Points analyst Luke Radel is here with the highlights of Governor Hochul's budget. Luke, what are the top priorities for New York State in 2024?
Thank you, Jake and Erica. Governor Kathy Hochul has announced this week her priorities for the budget plan. Top of the list is education, but first, let's take a look at some of the headline details of what Governor Kathy Hochul is proposing for fiscal year 2024 here in the Empire State. It's going to be $227 billion in total spending over the course of the next year, including $1 billion for mental health care. That's been something that the governor has been really focused on, speaking at the Bronx about the importance of ensuring quality mental health care for all New York residents. Another key aspect of this plan, no income tax hike on New Yorkers. According to Governor Kathy Hochul, she says it's, quote, because New Yorkers already believe they pay too much. Fact check on that one, absolutely true. We also see 800,000 new homes are going to be built by the state to address a housing shortage statewide, and $337 million is going to be spent to help reduce and prevent gun violence. This in the aftermath of the mass shooting at the Tops in Buffalo, New York, and several tragic shootings here of young children in the city of Syracuse. Now let's take a look at some of the top spending items. The issues that are being spent on the most, climate change is going to take $5.5 billion in spending. We're looking at child care taking up $7.6 billion, Medicaid taking up $27.8 billion, and the top priority, as I mentioned, is education at $42 billion. Now, that might seem like a lot of money. Put in there is the K-12 education and the state's higher education spending through its SUNY school system. But those higher ed schools are actually going to be facing a budget cut this year. The budget went up after fiscal year 2022 to around $8.1 billion last year. That's going to be declined by more than $500 million. The explanation for that change is the fact that SUNY schools have been actually running at a deficit in recent years. We're seeing very high deficits at state colleges across the state. At Fredonia, $16 million lost. Albany, $15 million lost. Cortland, $10.9 million. And here at SUNY ESF, $9 million were lost last year. Now, we heard those schools calling for more state aid in response to those deficits, but it doesn't seem like Governor Kathy Hochul has made that a priority. One thing she has made a priority, though, that has upset people across the state, particularly Republicans, is a, quote, gas stove ban that is in the works. Now, don't worry, it doesn't affect your gas stove now. It's going to only affect future use of gas stoves as the state hopes to have zero carbon emissions by the year 2030. That's all I got for now. Those are the priorities in Governor Hochul's budget. Jake and Erica, back to you guys.
Luke, thank you. President Biden is gearing up to deliver his State of the Union address tomorrow night. Biden will address both the House and the Senate, along with members of his cabinet and the Supreme Court. He's expected to highlight the accomplishments of his first 2 years in office while laying out a vision for the next 2 years and potentially a second term.
Some commentators have referred to tomorrow's speech as a potential soft launch for Biden's 2024 campaign. After the president is finished, newly elected Arkansas governor and former Trump White House press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders will deliver the Republican response.
And President Biden will make headlines inside the House chamber tomorrow during his State of the Union speech. But last week, it was the House committee assignments that garnered lots of attention. Chilakase Adeli joins us now to delve into some of the biggest news from Capitol Hill. Chile, thanks for joining us. Now, let's start with what is probably one of the most notable stories, and that's Ilhan Omar being removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
It definitely is, Jake. Omar ousted from her Foreign Affairs Committee seat by a 218 to 211 vote. Representative Brandon Williams, representing this area, he voted to oust Omar. It was pretty much a party line vote with the exception of one guy, David Joyce, a Republican from Ohio, who voted present on that vote. The resolution says that the reasoning for the removal stems from previous anti-Semitic comments made by Ilhan Omar, and it also argues that she cannot be objective in her role due to these comments. So what has she said that led the Republicans to try and do this? In 2019, she said that pro-Israel lobbyists were buying political support, and that was almost 4 years ago, but obviously this is the main point that the GOP is bringing up. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy actually had something to say about this, if we take a look at it on your screen right now.
Only like Israel because it's all about the Benjamins. And 3 years later she said, I didn't know there's a trope when it comes to referring to someone who's Jewish with money.
So you hear what McCarthy had to say there, and Omar says that she'll continue advocating for foreign policy despite not being on the Foreign Affairs Committee. She vowed that Friday speaking to supporters in Minneapolis at a coffee shop.
And Chile, can you talk a little bit about what the Democrats are saying about this, how exactly they've chosen to frame their response to this sudden removal?
So Republicans, obviously saying that this is the right move, the objective move. Democrats are saying this is partisan, this is seeking revenge for some of the things that may have happened previously with people getting censured, removed from committees for making off-brand comments. You saw House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries say this vote was partisan, and also Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also from the state of New York, had a very impassioned plea in the midst of all of this. Here's what she had to say.
Don't tell me this is about consistency. Don't tell me that this is about a condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks when you have a member of the Republican caucus who has talked about Jewish space lasers and an entire amount of tropes, and also elevated her to some of the highest committee assignments in this body.
So you hear that Jewish space lasers reference. Obviously, she's referencing Marjorie Taylor Greene with what she said a few years back. McCarthy put Marjorie Taylor Greene on the Homeland Security Committee, along with the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, after she was censured and removed previously for that. AOC in that speech, which you didn't hear in that clip, also called out Arizona Representative Paul Gosar to illustrate her point, essentially saying that the Republicans are inconsistent on this issue. Gosar, he tweeted a video of an anime depicting the killing of AOC in 2021 with both of them on cartoon heads. He was censured, removed from his committee assignments at that time, but McCarthy reinstated him in this new Congress.
Now, Chile, let's turn a little bit here. One of the biggest stories of this new Congress has been Long Island freshman Representative George Santos. And after saying that he would carry on like normal amid the investigation, he's now saying he'll step down from his assignments?
Yes, for the foreseeable future. He said that he's going to recuse himself from his committee assignments until clear. Now, we know there's a lot of investigations going on into his personal life, his resume, his finances. He currently served on the Small Business Committee and the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. Now, this is something to note. It was before Ilhan Omar's removal that he said this, and he's told the Washington Examiner that he did not want this to be an issue in terms of when Omar got removed last week. So it seems like he tried to get out of the way before Republicans were able to follow through with what happened with Ilhan Omar.
Chilakase Adeli, thanks for joining us. Coming up on Talking Points, Joe Biden's son Hunter is once again making headlines. We'll have the latest after the break. Stay with us.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Hunter Biden has been in the news involving his laptop for the past few years, but now we have more information.
This includes President Joe Biden's $250,000 line of credit and Hunter's team admitting that the information on the laptop was his. Now here to tell us more is Talking Points analyst Harrison Calder. Harrison?
Thank you, guys. Hunter Biden has had tons of up and down moments since we've heard about his laptop, but more has been released within the last week. Biden and his team are looking to investigate the computer shop repair opener in Delaware, which is the first time we see his team admit to his personal data being on the laptop, though they still say the overall narrative of what's on the laptop isn't accurate. The son of President Joe Biden has gone through attacks from Republicans about his uses of drugs, as well as his criminal investigation involving taxes. With all this still swiveling around, Hunter decided to hire a new law team, and they took to get John Paul Mac Isaac, the repair shop owner. The team believes that Mac Isaac is responsible for letting Biden's private and personal information out for the internet to see. Hunter Biden said, "There could be a laptop out there that was stolen from me. It could be that I was hacked. It could be that it was the Russian intelligence. It could be that it was stolen from me." A contract was signed between Biden and Mac Isaac where the laptop would become property of Mac Isaac if not picked up within 90 days, which he claims Hunter never came to recover the laptop. The timing of this could be considered interesting because President Joe Biden took out a $250,000 line of credit at his Delaware home while the probing and document scandals were picked up. Biden got the line of credit in December of 2022, but kept it more on the down low, making it seem as if there was a reason why beyond his lifestyle. Conducting the investigation is attorney David Weiss, who was appointed by former President Donald Trump. The investigations are to continue for the time being until we can find a fitting result.
Harrison Calder joining us at the desk now. And Harrison, can you just give us a quick recap on why this news was so big nationally?
Yes, so all the news came out from Hunter Biden from the New York Post in October of 2020, of course, that being a month before the 2020 election. So big news being that his father, of course, is our current president, Joe Biden. Rudy Giuliani in that as well, the associate of Donald Trump. So with Trump also running, them going to look and take down the Bidens, of course, a big part. And the Biden team signing or hiring a new team to figure out and be a little more aggressive on the attacking end of investigations.
And Harrison, can you talk a little bit about what this new hiring of a law team, what this whole new team means for how the case will eventually play out?
So the Biden team wasn't getting going what they wanted to when it came to Hunter and Ukraine. So what they decided to do is hire a new team, try and get at Mac Isaac, get at Giuliani, try and investigate them on the other side, see what they were doing. The team claims that they were attempting to weaponize the content on the laptops against the Bidens. And the whole goal is to keep Hunter Biden clean, his name clean, and of course punish Mac Isaac or Giuliani if possible.
And Harrison, does the searching of President Biden's home for classified documents play any role in this?
It does a little bit. So they searched his house, the FBI searched his house in Delaware last week. They did not find any classified documents. It was a perfectly legal search, no warrant, it was consensual and all that. But of course, a few documents were found a few days earlier at his office in Washington, D.C., which brings up the fact that there still could be stuff lying around that we don't know about. So people keeping their eyes open and still interested in what could happen.
Harrison Calder, thanks so much for joining us. The Advanced Placement course on African American Studies has been revised. The course has been making headlines in the past weeks after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis threatened to ban it in his state.
In the official framework made by Public AP, topics such as Black Lives Matter, slavery reparations, and queer theory are no longer subjects being taught. The new course is being tested at 60 schools across the United States. It is expected that the class will be offered in hundreds of additional high schools next school year. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is expected to announce a campaign for president in 2024. Haley most recently served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations in the Trump administration.
Following her planned launch on February 15th, she'll have plenty of time for voters to get to know her. Haley was reportedly considered to replace Mike Pence as Trump's running mate in 2020. And speaking of potential Trump VP picks, Kari Lake lost her Arizona governor's race last year, but she's now teasing a run for the Senate in 2024. The seat is a critical one for both Democrats and Republicans. Incumbent Senator Kristen Sinema recently announced that she is leaving the Democratic Party and becoming an independent.
So, this leaves the door open for Republicans like Lake. Can you talk a little bit about how this switches the effect of the Republican Party?
Yeah, so... Sorry, excuse me. If the Republican Party takes advantage of cinema becoming independent, then this could mean a very good things for them. They could win the Senate seat. That being said, they would have to nominate someone that is more moderate, and Carrie Lake is not very moderate. I'll talk more about that later, but Arizona has been trending left in the past couple of years. The last 3 Senate races have been won by Democrats, as well as the last gubernatorial race in the 2020 presidential election. So that means that they would have to nominate someone that is moderate, not a radical Republican, especially to compete against Representative Gallegos, who is the Democrat running against whoever the Republican nominee ends up being.
And Olivia, just to put it in short and to simplify it for a second, why does this race matter so much?
It matters a lot because Arizona is a swing state. Arizona has always been pretty important in elections because it sometimes goes Democrat, it sometimes goes Republican, and Sinema has voted on a more Republican side. For example, she voted against the minimum wage increase to the 2021 pandemic aid package, as well as she is in favor of blocking efforts to end the filibuster, which are more Republican-leaning views. So if a Republican is elected, then more things that Biden proposes would get blocked, and on the contrary, if a farther left Democrat's elected, they would support Biden.
And Olivia, can you talk a little bit about who the possible Republican candidates are, and do they even stand a chance in a state that's trending left?
Yeah, so Carrie Lake is one of them. One of the reasons why she is considered more radical is because she is currently putting up a legal challenge she's claiming that her 2022 gubernatorial election was stolen from her. So she says she's not going to confirm if she's even going to run until that's over. Another possible elect would be, another possible nominee would be Blake Masters. He lost by 5 percentage points in the race to Mark Kelly last year in the Senate race. He's talking about running, but he has been pretty unfavorable lately, and more radical leaning, so that's why he might not run. Some more moderate candidates that could run are businesswoman Karen Taylor Robson, Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb, and Representative Juan Ciscomani. All those would be more moderate choices that would definitely have a better chance of winning.
Olivia Maniscalco, thank you so much. And coming up, we have more to talk about with Olympic outcomes and what's to come in the future for the Olympic boycott. Talking Points will be back shortly.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner!
Go. Excellent. Yeah, I saw you guys out there.
Welcome back to Talking Points. The effect of the war in Ukraine has rippled all the way into the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Ukraine now threatens to boycott the Games if Russians and Belarusians compete. This push comes after Russia destroyed over 340 sports facilities over the course of the war, according to Ukrainian officials.
And unless the International Olympic Committee bars Russia and Belarusian athletes, Ukraine will continue to form a coalition of allies to stand in solidarity against participation in the Paris Games. Our Talking Points analyst Adriana Hyderova joins us to talk about the IOC's response. Adriana?
thanks, Erica. As Ukraine continues to gather support across Europe, the Polish sports prime minister says that by allowing Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete, that it would give the impression that IOC is condoning Russia's actions. And even Baltic states such as Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia are all on board with this idea of a boycott. And it's not surprising as these countries have been working together closely ever since the beginning of the war. So if Ukraine does decide to follow through with the idea of the boycott, it is safe to assume that these countries will follow a similar pattern. IOC, on the other hand, says that their mission is to bring all athletes together in the name of peace. And a boycott like this goes directly against their values and goes directly against the values of the Charter. Now, let's take a closer look at what they had to say. Quote, "It is extremely regretful to escalate this discussion with the threat of a boycott at this premature stage. As history has shown, previous boycotts did not achieve their political ends and served only to punish the athletes," citing that citing the fact that athletes should not be discriminated against based on the passport that they hold. With such strong opposition happening right now in Europe, it's actually quite interesting to see that it has opened doors towards Asia. Currently, the Asian Olympic Committee has extended their hands in supporting the Russian and Belarusian athletes by giving them a chance to participate in their qualifying events. Meanwhile, here in the United States, they support the IOC's decision, but only under one condition, and that is that these athletes must participate under a neutral flag with minimal emblem representation, and only under strict regulations we may see these athletes in action in the Paris 2024 Games. Erica, Jake, back to you.
Adriana, thank you. Earlier this week, what looked to be a dot in the sky out west turned out to be a national story. That dot is now a suspected Chinese spy balloon. Talking Points analyst Ronnie Perillo is here now. Ronnie, what happened and what has been the political response to this?
Jake, thanks. Well, many of us remember that video from last week of what looked to be a large balloon floating over Montana. The Pentagon confirming shortly after it was a Chinese spy balloon hovering at nearly 60,000 feet. Now, the first question many had is how the balloon even entered U.S. airspace and why it was not immediately shot. So let's break that down. According to the Pentagon, the balloon was first seen over the city of Billings, Montana last week and then made its way across the continental U.S. Now, it was eventually shot down just off the coast of South Carolina 2 days later by a Sidewinder missile. The Pentagon says they advised President Biden against shooting down the balloon over land as it would pose a risk to civilians living below. Now, keep in mind the weight of the equipment on that balloon was equivalent to 3 city buses. But perhaps the bigger question here, how did it even end up in Montana of all places? Well, the American West is home to many missile silos. China, however, claims it was a weather balloon that floated off course. But many here in the U.S. are saying something very different. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called the move by the Chinese government, quote, irresponsible, and canceled the trip to Beijing this past Friday. Now, this raises even more questions for the American public, as China is seen by many as being a powerful threat to the United States. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy requested that the Gang of Eight, which is a bipartisan group of top House intelligence members, be briefed on the situation and said, quote, President Biden cannot remain silent on this situation.
Now, Ronnie, as many of us know, the State of the Union speech is tomorrow night. What do you think President Biden will say about this, if he says anything at all?
That's right, Erica. Well, I'm not sure exactly how much the president will talk about this situation, but I'm sure it will come up. Maybe they'll try to use it as a victory by saying it was shot down. This does create, though, a timely rebuttal for Republicans. So as we learned earlier in the show, Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders will deliver the Republican response to Biden, and that's likely where she'll bring this up as a national security issue. Republicans have been highly critical of Biden's relationship with China, and they can use this to further their point tomorrow night.
And Ronnie, what was China's response to the balloon being shot down?
Well, Jake, as you might expect, China is disagreeing with the United States' decision to shoot down the balloon, still claiming that it was a weather tool and accidentally floated off course. They were obviously not happy when the U.S. shot down the balloon and said that this could undermine U.S.-China relations.
Ronnie Perillo, thank you so much.
Coming up on Talking Points, over 100 House Republicans have criticized President Biden's Student Loans Act. We'll have the latest on the state of the act after the break.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Talking Points. 171 Republican lawmakers have spoken out against President Biden's student loan program. Many GOP leaders have filed amicus briefs with the Supreme Court this week, claiming the program is unconstitutional.
The program proposed would relieve eligible participants of up to $20,000 in student loans. Talking Point senior analyst Olivia Maniscalco joins us again to break down the resistance of this program. So, Olivia, can you talk a little bit about what this looks like from a conservative side?
Yeah, basically, the reason why many conservatives, besides how they're saying it's an unconstitutional breach of the separation of powers, it is incredibly expensive. It would cost somewhere around $4 billion. $400 billion in costs. How it would work is that it would be $10,000 for some recipients, those who made less than $125,000 or $250,000 on joint filings, and then some would get $20,000. Roughly $1.6 trillion in student loans would be given, but with money comes taxpayers having to pay that money, and that is one of the main reasons why many Republicans oppose it.
And Olivia, you mentioned taxpayers and the financial part of it. I saw that Jeff Duncan, a Republican from South Carolina, said his biggest concern is the continuing debt spiral. And we saw the U.S. hit the debt ceiling a couple weeks ago, and we know that McCarthy and Biden were meeting about it last week. You have to think that that came up in their talking about, us going even a little bit farther into debt after we've hit the debt ceiling. And in the face of what many are calling is going to be an economic crisis, you have to consider that that's going to be one of the things that Republicans are pushing back the most on.
And what's interesting about all of this, especially as we're approaching State of the Union, is many GOP admin they already subpoenaed the Biden administration to speak towards, them maybe not giving conservative parents or even conservative taxpayers a say over mask mandates, critical race theory, things like that. So, there's always so much to talk about regarding education. But also, what more could you say about how the GOP feels about, Republican parents not having a say on the student loans?
I would say that he's trying to combat this issue, but obviously it takes a lot. Yeah, that's all I have to say about this issue.
Olivia, thank you. And that's all the time we have for you on this episode of Talking Points. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CitrusTV News and like us on Facebook. I'm Jake Morrell.
And I'm Erica Love. Have a great night, Syracuse.